like I'm on the train.
Okay, the record button has been hit.
Watch the
Christine,
gap.
You can get us started.
It started, yes. Oh, there you go. Okay. Do you want me to begin?
Yes, please.
Can I have a motion to welcome everybody? Can I have a motion to adjourn the executive session and rejoin our public session, please?
Motion, Michelle.
Motion from Michelle and a second from Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, that's sadly 6. We stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Okay. You all know your own personal emergency evacuation procedures from your homes or wherever you're watching from. Right, Bill? Wherever you're watching from.
Just to mention, the tone is people entering from the waiting room. I apologize. We had 3 different meetings tonight, so we're trying to avoid having to jump out of one Zoom ID to another, so that's why you're hearing that. I'm sorry, Christine, go ahead.
That's okay. Okay, to our approvals. It is upon recommendation from the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education approve the minutes transcription from the meeting of the Huntington Union Free School Board of Education dated December 14th, 2020. Can I have a motion?
Bill.
Motion.
A motion from Bill and a second from Linda. All in favor? Aye. I think that was everybody. Then we have a few FYIs, budget appropriation reports, budget transfers, claim audit, revenue status report. And
Just a quick mention, Christine, the claims audit report.
yes,
We have not had that on a board agenda before, and this is something that obviously comes to the board president, to myself, and to Kathy every month.
mhm,
I don't know why the trend here or the historical tradition was just to share that with the board. There is absolutely no reason that can't be on a board agenda on a monthly basis. So moving forward, that's exactly what we're going to do.
and the purpose of that being so that it becomes a public.
It's transparency. I mean,
Right.
there's really not much to it, but we have 3 types of audits. We have the external audit, which is the big one, the end of year financial review. We have the internal, which focuses on specific things that you as a board and we district decide need to be focused upon. And the claims audits are really just looking at our warrants and our scheduled payments each month.
Right.
And if there are any shortcomings related to them.
They will be noted there.
Yeah, I put the last 2 months on just to give it a quick show here. It's a letter. They randomly select warrants to look at. These are claims on warrants, payments that go out to specific vendors. And then if they find that there is a confirming purchase order, you've got to put a purchase order in place before you purchase something. In this particular month, everything was fine with all the warrants that they looked at. And they will also look at samples of extra pay and overtime sheets to make sure that there was nothing of note there. And that is typically an area of strength in the district. But yeah, sometimes there'll be a warrant that they'll flag and say it's a confirming purchase order, which means we jumped the gun a little bit in terms of small purchase. But I mean, you can see in this particular month, this is October, there were a couple of significantly large purchases or total warrant amounts. And obviously, this is what we're looking for each month.
Right. And this is done after, so people can see that there's warrants on our agenda also. That's another set of people that review the warrants that we approve every month,
Correct.
every meeting, I should say. Okay,
And the claims audit report comes in, I'm going to say, the middle of the following month. So we don't have December's yet. That's why it's not on here. And when we receive that, it'll be on the next agenda.
next meeting. Okay.
Okay.
It is upon recommendation from the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education approve the November 2020 treasurer's report. I have a motion.
Motion.
Linda's hands and a second.
Xavier.
Oh, okay. I can't say.
Xavier's muted.
Say your names out loud, please.
Xavier's
All-
muted.
Okay, there
Okay,
you
so a second from Xavier, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's everyone. Sorry, trying to move forward. All right, my agenda's not moving forward. I'm sorry, 1 second. I just need to,
You want me to do the warrants, the next one?
I got, I think
Or
I
you
have
got
it.
it?
I got it. I just needed to sign back on the Wi-Fi on this.
On the screen if you need it.
Okay, well, it is upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education approve the attached warrants, which were certified for payment on December 22nd, 2020 and January 6th, 2021. Could I have a motion? Out loud.
Motion.
Xavier, in a second.
Second from Linda.
Linda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am still not connected. Okay, so we move on to board member communications and announcements.
Kelly's having sound issues. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just going to start it off anyway. I just wanted to make a statement with everything that's been going on. I wanted to take a moment to thank all of the leaders of our district and the parents in our district once again, because these are stressful times for everyone, both with COVID situation and in our nation. And I want to applaud the leadership we've seen throughout our district because our students need all of us. And they have concerns and questions, and the district has been here and will be here as a resource for all of our families. And I just wanted to reiterate how grateful I am for that and just acknowledge it. Really, that's what I wanted to say. Anybody else have comments or board communications or announcements?
Just to say that I agree that the district has been wonderful, and I thank Jim and all of his colleagues for their leadership.
Great. Okay, then we move on. Oh, let me move on to, if you can answer the door.
To answering the doorbell.
Nancy.
There's probably a way I can turn that off, so I will look into that. We up to me?
We're up to you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to talk a little bit about the COVID update, testing, vaccination, when we get to that point in the items for discussion. First of all, I'd like to thank the families of Huntington, myself, for their patience last week. This is a thankless situation, and we're attacking a public health issue, we are attacking an educational issue, and they're not necessarily moving in the same directions all the time. So I do appreciate your understanding last week. It was a concern just based on the numbers and some of the trends we were seeing in terms of staff availability. And I do believe that although it didn't necessarily help educationally, it did help in terms of just making sure that we're able to start fresh today with a full complement of staff in each building. We're still, obviously dealing with some COVID-related quarantines and some COVID-related isolations, but we're going to have to get through those one at a time. I do appreciate the patience, and my hope is that the last couple of days have shown us regionally a decline, and if that trend can continue, maybe the vaccinations will start to kick in, and this could be the beginning of what could be the long-awaited move toward that light at the end of the tunnel. So I ask everybody to keep their fingers crossed with me. The quarantine period has been reduced. I do want to clarify something there. It has been reduced from 14 to 10. I do believe one of the driving forces behind that was the CDC as well as New York State making sure that there were an ample amount of a number of healthcare workers available to treat people that were entering hospitals for this reason. But that said, while reduced to 10, still requires a 24-hour at least symptom-free period at the end of that quarantine period. And both the CDC and the New York State Department of Health have asked that there be monitoring for the 4 days following that 10-day period. And that suggests that there could still be some symptoms that are in place. You should not come in. You should not send your kids to school if they are in fact still demonstrating even minor symptoms. We are trying to avoid, now we have K through 6 back. If something happens in a classroom, it's very likely that, in fact, there will be a full class quarantine if there is a case in that classroom, and we do not want that to happen, or at least to minimize the risk of that occurring. So please, please, please fill out your daily health screenings every day, as I keep reminding, and please do keep your kids home if there is a symptom in anybody in that household. Okay, Governor gave his state of the state today. I did not get to watch the whole thing, but I was very attuned to any comments he made or would have made regarding the fiscal state of New York and the types of situations we're going to be dealing with as school districts moving forward. He seems to be very, I'll say, at least moderately confident that an aid package will be as expected and will not need to be cut significantly, but until we have that money in hand, it's very difficult to plan accordingly. He is supposed to deliver his executive budget on January 19th. I did not hear anything regarding whether he'd be delaying that. If he'd be delaying that, my hope is it is delivered on time, because honestly, it drives some of what we do. We did not send out the budget postcard this year to all households within Huntington, as we typically do, because this process could change, and I didn't want to lock in certain topics for certain dates. But I do plan to hold true to, and I will get this information obviously posted, hold true to as close to where we typically would be at this point as possible. But again, the questions on revenue are still out there. We have, let's see, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have realized or have watched the news, and our United States Department of Education secretary has in fact resigned. No commentary there, just a mention. And as of today, we actually have a new Regents Chancellor. That's Lester Young, who I think he's been a regent for about 12, 13 years now. He represents New York City. He's got a strong educational background, and he's a fighter. He is a man of strong will. He knows his X's and O's in education, and my hope is that he will continue to demonstrate the type of leadership that he has since he got onto the board, now as the Regents Chancellor, and I'm sure you'll see something in Newsday about this tomorrow.
To remind everybody, that was because the chancellor moved to her new position.
She's now the, Betty Rosa is now the interim commissioner. Thank you, Christine. And there was the chancellor's position had not been filled. Andrew Brown, I believe, is still the vice chancellor, and Lester Young has now taken over the top regent's spot. I've had a chance to meet him a couple of times. He's a gentleman. Legislative programs are usually something common at this time of year, whether it be through BOCES or the Suffolk County Superintendents Association or NYSBA, because of the COVID situation there. Most of them are not even taking place at all, but we are in touch with our legislators, and there's a lot of conversation that needs to be held between now and the time school district budgets are prepared. I did speak with Kristen Kanzer and PTA leadership, PTA presidents this week about holding parent forums in English and Spanish at the end of the month and into early February. I do want to mention, thank you to Mrs. Alamia. I think she's on tonight. We have a couple of alumni days coming up. Also, I believe in both languages, and they did a great job reaching out to some of our recent alum. These alumni days are going to be held virtually, but we're also starting to pick up the rate at which our students are completing the FAFSA. So we were a little behind, but due to some of the efforts that the guidance department has put forth, we're starting to catch up a little bit, and we do want these kids to have a chance to speak to their slightly older peers who have gone through this process, to speak to them about some of their experiences. We have had conversations as an administration and as a staff about the fact that this COVID situation is not going to go on like this forever, and we do not want to wake up one morning, and this is what it's going to feel like. I can almost see it coming, that wake up one morning and it's not going to be there as it is right now. And we do want to think ahead and think post-pandemic and think about some of the things that we'll want our kids to have in place, and the knowledge we want them to have, the skills we want them to have, the social abilities that we want them to have. And it's important that we don't forget that this is what our mission is. And right now, it feels like we're playing a lot of doctor, but the fact is there is a great deal of work and ground that's going to need to be made up after this, and any of that ground that can be made up immediately is or has already been made up extraordinarily important. Sorry to drone on a little bit. Athletics are underway. We have our fencers in, we have our winter track program has begun, and we have our swimmers and divers in the water. I do want to mention thank you to Mr. Cusack for coordinating our participation in a recent Long Island Student Forum. I did send, I think it's in this week's update to the board, a report from that forum. Kids from like 50-something districts participated and got to speak together to each other from different districts about items related to social justice and other issues, COVID pandemic related issues that honestly, we know what's happening here, but it's nice for the kids to have a chance to speak with others from other districts and other areas in Long Island, and that's just what that provided. So I hope you'll enjoy looking at that document. We have begun the initiation of an esports program at the high school. I think I may have mentioned that last month. We hope that that'll take hold, and we hope to expand on that in the years to come. Robotics had their kickoff this past weekend. Nothing stops these kids. Infinite Recharge is this year's challenge. They will overcome any obstacle that's put in their way, regardless of what it is, COVID or non-COVID related. But they did a nice virtual program over the weekend where they introduced this year's challenge to those who are participating. I participated in a breakout room myself with Harris Levinson, who facilitated, a couple of alum in there, Jack Farrell and James Obermeyer, and it's always nice to be in a room with young people who I just feel like they're a heck of a lot smarter than I am, but they're ready to make this challenge among the best that Huntington has had to address and meet in a long time. Congratulations to Jordan Fort and CJ Kiviat. These are two young people who earned the Suffolk Zone Award. It's among the highest awards that a student, physical education student, can receive. It is an award given by the New York State Association of Physical Education, Health, Recreation, and Dance. And unfortunately, we can't celebrate with them right now in person, but we hope to make up for that in the spring. And I'd also like to thank the various music programs at all levels that shared some beautiful winter work with me so that I can share with the community. It's just nice it's nice to see our kids in action, enjoying themselves, both vocally and with their instruments. So thank you to all. Keep up the great work, and certainly more good things to follow.
I don't think we had a meeting after the drama club presented their play, but they should be congratulated also on the Diary of Anne Frank,
Yeah,
which is
thank you to
still
Mr.
available.
Twinderman and the entire cast.
Yes.
Great job.
That it?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we move to our first public commentary. Would remind everybody, if you wish to address the board during the public commentary, please raise your electronic hand. And those that are called on, please identify yourself. Mr. Plansky will unmute you during the first public commentary. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes for a total of 30 minutes. The first speakers are limited to the items for discussion and action which are listed on the agenda, and if time remains after all those who wish to speak on those items for discussion and action, others can address further issues. Only school district residents and staff members and students shall be to address the board during public commentary, and please don't address any personnel issues or name students by name. If you keep it to appropriate matters for public commentary. Do we have any raised hands?
If not, we'll have another opportunity at the end.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, then to our first item for discussion and action, the superintendent will present the latest COVID developments.
I was looking at what I could have done graphically here to present, not prevent. I wish I could prevent all of this. Some of the latest information and data. There really is not a lot to share other than what I can share verbally. I'll start with the testing because I know I did field some questions over the weekend. You know, I know people want the kids back in school every day, and I know some people would like the remote to extend a little bit longer, and this is part of the balance that we have to strike, and we're really trying to do this right. There is no perfect answer here. The question that keeps coming up is what is the threshold at which, what is the positivity rate threshold, if nothing else, at which schools will close? And honestly, it's not just about positivity rate. I do believe that the powers that be in Albany are not, they're fighting against closing schools because they know how important it is for kids to be there, both socially, academically, and otherwise, and emotionally. What the governor had initially stated over the summer is that if the rate was below 5%, schools in that if regional rate was below 5%, the schools would open. If the rate exceeded 9%, the schools would close. Well, when we opened, we were well below 2%. We were in the 0 to 1.5 range, bouncing around in that area. Recently, obviously, for the past couple of weeks, Suffolk County has been well over 9%. And in the middle of all this, the governor established that microcluster strategy / designation program that seems to have kind of waned a little bit because the initial metrics there were 2.5%, 3%, and 4%. If that were the case, the entire state would be closed. I think everybody should be muted. But with that said, the question I got is, we're well past 9%. Why have we not closed? Well, we have not been mandated to close at this point. We've got no direction. We have not been, the microcluster still exists. We have not been designated as a microcluster. Last week, I think it avoided some quarantines and some isolations because we did extend the fully remote for that week. The kids needed to be back in school this week, and we are still at a 7-day rolling average above 9%. So we remain prepared if they come down and say, you're red, and the only way you can stay open is if you test your way back. If you test your way to stay open, we'll do it. And we do have some partners in place to do that. I would like to acknowledge the fact that on Friday, we did call in, and I'm trying to remember the advanced ACD. I forget what it stands for. But this is a service that basically provides an opportunity for our staff to get tested. On Friday, we had 132 slots, 108 people actually showed up to be tested. And as I mentioned to the community, it was a breath of fresh air to have 108 negative tests. It was actually the first time I had been tested because it was right there waiting for me, so I took it. But that also, it makes a difference. It makes you feel more comfortable when you know, because you could be walking around with this asymptomatically, although that's less common in adults. To have this option to be tested is a positive. Actually, it's a negative. Negative is I can't wait till the time to hit that time once again when positive actually means positive. But with that said, that mobile unit is going to return on Thursday and Friday. We're trying to make this, obviously this virus can hit at any time. So it's important for us to provide these opportunities. There's no cost to the district for this. It goes through insurance, and with the insurance, there is no cost. There's obviously accommodations that are made by the service if insurance is a problem for an individual. But we did have that experience on Friday. And I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that we did have an opportunity to bring in about 35 of our health and mental health employees in the district, got them into phase 1A. Between last Wednesday and Saturday, those people received their first dose of the vaccination. And honestly, a couple of them sent pictures after they had gotten them with their certificates, and it drew a little emotion because to me, it signifies that this is where the recovery begins. And I will say that the vast majority of our folks said, just tell me where to be and I'll get there. And just their gratitude and their excitement about getting this first dose was enough for me. And now phase 1B, which was supposed to work on a much larger scale, but along the same planning lines, kind of took a turn for a little bit more of a free-for-all, but we are trying to coordinate in district now a program that will allow our staff to be vaccinated in an orderly manner if they have not already signed up for their vaccinations, which some of them have. A lot of people for the right reasons are eager to get their first doses as soon as possible. So we are going to do everything we can to provide the information and to facilitate that as promptly as we can. Any questions from the board? I mean, that's for the most part where we stand in both of those categories, testing and vaccinations.
Hey, Jim, is there any willingness to bring the vaccinations into the schools?
Yes, I'd actually like to be able to do that for the community as well. And I have started to, I actually had a conversation today, which may lead to that, but this was the first day that phase 1B was supposed to have been open. So phase 1B does not include the general public. It does include educators. So they're first on the list, along with public transit workers, people over the age of 75. We're going to follow the state's designated plan. I got some questions about, well, do I qualify for phase 1A? Honestly, if I refer somebody from the school district for a phase 1A vaccination and that person does not qualify, that could actually prevent us from providing this opportunity or shutting down the hospital. There were some examples upstate where that happened. But Xavier, the answer to your question is, we are asking those questions. We are looking to facilitate just that. And if we can, we absolutely will. Anything else?
I know you've announced it in your letter, but did you mention again, that the 6th grade is now fully in school? So that was a change.
I did mention K through 6 is back in daily if they wish to be, yes.
Mm-hmm. Do we think, so I know right now we're in the middle of the dead of winter, well, or whatever. But as we look forward to the spring, I know I'm not talking about changes in the classrooms, maybe because that's a whole different ballgame, but are we thinking about outside and utilizing, to get activities, to get children together and those sort of things? Are we planning? Are we thinking? What are we doing there?
Well, right now we are in the dead of winter, but the goal is to get back to that as quickly as possible. I'd like to see, this is our, I had a meeting this afternoon. We were discussing athletics, and our hope is that as the months move forward, and again, if this vaccination does take hold and the rates start to go down, we have plans in place to move forward with our fall and spring season. So just to get the kids moving and excited about something is 150,000% critical at this point. So, and that doesn't apply just to athletics, it applies to everything that we offer in Huntington School District that has been compromised because of this. This virtual platform, I think everybody's had enough at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know that I know that. I just like to hear it said out.
Yep. And again, as you guys mentioned before, our staff is making this work. The teachers are doing it in the classroom. Our other staff members are doing it throughout the buildings. This is no easy task for anyone, but they continue to meet the challenge. They continue to see the positive in things. And this is what the kids need to see and hear as well. It's what I need to see and hear, because I have, believe me, I've always seen the light, but I have my days as well. And a kind word can go a long way.
Anybody else have questions for Jim, or should we move to our next item? Okay. So it is upon recommendation from the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education waive a second reading and adopt new policy 3421, Title IX and sex discrimination. We'll do a motion and a second, and then we can discuss. Yep. Can I have a motion, please?
Kelly?
That was Kelly? Was that
Yeah,
Kelly?
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the second was?
Michelle.
Michelle. Okay. All right. So do you want to talk about it first, Jim, and then?
Yeah, there's a lot to this, and this is actually a required policy. We had a half-hour policy committee meeting before executive session late this afternoon. This policy took up the half hour, and there were some very good questions asked that I'm going to follow up on. But in the interim, this does have to be adopted, and it probably will have to be adopted again in the coming months, because I imagine that some of these amendments are going to change. So in the past, Title IX was addressed through federal guidelines. Well, this requirement, it's a new policy. It's in the same section of the policy manual as any other type of harassment or discrimination. But this is in direct response to change in the law and regulations, Title IX regulations that are designed to implement the Education Act. You see it right there, Education Amendment Acts of 1972. Definition of Title IX is there. The description in the item here delineates some of the sections in the policy. It's an 18-page policy, which is somewhat unique. And some of the questions about the policy that the policy committee came up with had to do with just some of the legal details behind how something approached here. And I am going to ask those questions this week. And again, this will probably have to be amended moving forward, but it is something that has to be in place immediately.
You had mentioned to me that the only things that you had any real say over in here were some timelines, and really the rest was required.
Correct. The timelines, and also Dr. Acker and Ms. McCoy are our would be our two designated Title IX coordinators. The fact is you only have to have one, but it makes sense in any situation for there to be two for a number of different reasons. So they're actually appointed as civil rights compliance officers during the reorganization meeting anyway, and it makes sense for them to take on this role as well. They have both familiarized themselves with the policy. It is a lot more detailed than it used to be, and the procedures are lengthy, but it is designed for the right reasons.
Jim, would we have to
timeframes.
would we have to formally appoint them now?
The policy will do that.
The policy does that. Okay.
Policy will
It
do that.
names them. It names them, so as.
It
we-
names them, so adopting the policy appoints them. Okay.
Correct. And in the document, one of the questions was, typically we appoint a position and not a person, and we did that, but I also have their phone numbers and emails in there. And the reason there is just to provide for an ease of finding contact information if need be. That question came up. Good questions asked during this tonight's policy committee meeting.
Question, Jim.
Yep.
The policy does call for the Title IX coordinators to have training. How specific or formal is that?
We have a service in place called the Global Compliance Network, where some of that training can likely be accomplished, but some of this is going to have to go through our attorneys as well. So there is going to have to be more specific training than has ever been required before for this purpose, to make sure that they are well aware of what they would need to do should a complaint arise. That's a big part of this, and that's one of the major changes in shouldn't say a change in the policy because it's new, but we do have a general policy in place. This would go beyond that in terms of the training, in terms of the record keeping, and in terms of what we need to share with the community. Policy publication.
Formalizes and is more specific to what we had before.
Absolutely.
Jim, I
Oh,
I know-
sorry.
discussed this earlier. One of the issues that I was having with it is with regards to page 7, as we talked about earlier, is the burden of proof has been shifted to the school district, something that to me as an attorney seems counterintuitive, that if somebody brings a complaint, makes an assertion that something happened, it's generally the person who's making the complaint to prove that assertion. The language here makes me feel like it's the school's burden of proof to establish that actually did happen. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe it's an educational law thing, but I did look through the statute and I know that it's there verbatim. I would just like to understand it legally. Maybe if our attorneys can help me understand that.
And I will follow up with them on that. We had this conversation earlier, and this is the way this has to be written, but I do want to provide that explanation so that we understand what our burden is, and B, I can make sure that this is fully understood by the board as well.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yes,
But
thank
it
you,
is
Xavier, for bringing that up.
Right.
Okay, then we are, the motion is to waive a second read, so are all in favor? Aye. Xavier?
Honestly, I'm not 100% comfortable with that language yet.
Okay. Jim, can you just, before we finish voting, can you just say why it needs to be, like, what happens if it's not approved? Not that if Xavier votes no, it wouldn't be approved, but I'm just asking why, what would happen if it wasn't?
If we did not have this policy in place and a complaint was in fact brought to our attention, we'd have an issue. We'd have a legal issue.
So if we approve it and then you come back with, so, I mean, we could readdress it.
We could
If-
revisit it, absolutely.
We hear answers to questions.
I expect to have to do this anyway, because I think some of the regulations, the federal Title IX regulations are going to be modified over the next couple of weeks anyway.
Right.
So I do expect to have to revisit this, but my personal opinion is we'd have more of a problem if we didn't adopt as is and then revisit, as opposed to holding off and risking not having it in place.
So personally, I'm willing to vote aye on the, with that understanding that we would readdress it if there was something came back that, to answers to the questions that the policy committee had that we are not comfortable with.
And understand that, and this was a great conversation we had earlier today, but this was thoroughly vetted back and forth. This went on for, I'm going to say, a couple of months worth of time to get this 18-page policy into the format, into the place that it's in right now. And we should have it to draw upon should something happen. And like I said, we can revisit it at any time, well, at any board meeting for that matter.
Okay, so then can I have the A's? That's Christine. Just say your name if you're saying A. Aye.
Michelle.
Kelly.
Aye.
Aye, Linda.
Aye,
Michelle.
Kelly.
And nays?
That's Xavier.
I'm
Bill?
I'm an A too. Right
Oh,
now.
okay. I didn't hear you, sorry. So that's 4-2, and the motion would carry, right?
Yep.
Okay,
And just so we understand,
Regardless, I'm going to bring this
I
back.
totally understand. I totally
Yeah,
understand.
it's just to that part of it, like I completely agree with the spirit of the policy, the procedure. And I really don't think that it'll have an effect if it's in place or not, because it's the statute that's being codified here.
Yep.
So if we did have a complaint from here to the next board meeting, I think we're still protected because it's the law. I'm not comfortable with that area right there. And it could be a perfectly good explanation. I just want to feel comfortable with it.
And we will find it out.
And that's going to be my goal. I have it in my head why it's there, but I don't want to speak for an attorney. This has been vetted so many times by both attorneys who have gone through this from Garcia's firm. I'm going to have them provide me with a little bit more so I can turnkey it to you.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Excellent. Okay. I knew you weren't voting against a sexual harassment law.
No.
No, I know exactly what you're doing. And it
We
makes-
knew exactly what you were doing. Oh. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, it is upon recommendation from the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education waive a second reading and adopt new policy 5670, records management. Could I have a motion from somebody?
Motion.
Xavier, and a second from Bill. Anything you want to tell us about this one before we vote?
Really quickly, I just want to make it clear that the way we have our policy approval set up, I prefer not to hand you a policy and waive the first read. The reason I did it with the last one is just simply because of timing and how long it took our attorneys to go through it, and for us to question it and to get it into a place where it's ready to go, and it started a while ago. So timing was the issue there. With this one, it's just a no-brainer. You have already adopted retention and disposition schedule, LGS 1. It replaces ED 1. ED 1 is now obsolete. What that document does is it provides us, it is a manual that dictates for us how long we need to keep certain documents. For example, of a set of Regents exams must be kept for a year. Most documents, for whatever the reason, the magic number is 6 years, and we store things in archives, but this schedule basically picks upon every document that we have as educators, tells us how long we have to keep it and when we can dispose of it. ED1 is out, LGS is in. You have already adopted LGS 1 long before the January 1 deadline. It was supposed to be in place by January 1st, 2021. You adopted it on October 5, 2020. This just codifies it in policy.
I'm sorry, I'm sure you said, but the schedule comes from where?
New York State Archives,
Thank you.
New York State.
Any questions regarding this policy? I know we got it a little late, but it's pretty simple. That doesn't mean you can't have a question.
And the only reason I put it on late is because it's very, very straightforward. And there's a regulation that goes along with it, same, that's posted there as well.
Okay, so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think that's everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to curriculum and instruction. Ms. McCoy.
Evening. It is upon recommendation from the Superintendent of Schools that the Board of Education approve CSE, CPSE submissions as delineated.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion from Linda.
Linda, and a
Kelly.
second from Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's everyone. Thank you, Ms. McCoy. We're back to Mr. Polanski for personnel.
And I'm asking the board for approval of personnel items on schedules 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 16, and 22.
Okay, could I have a motion, please?
Bill,
Bill, and a second from
Linda.
Linda, I saw. Okay, any questions? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
That's everyone. Some announcements, Mr. Polanski?
Yeah, I have 3 to share, I believe. I know I saw both of these individuals on tonight. We've, unfortunately, COVID has been complicating in so many different ways, but we did have 2 leave replacement positions actually translate into probationary positions. So we've had some 2 outstanding new teachers on staff this year. Actually, one of them has been with us for a little bit longer, actually been in that leave for longer than a year, but I'd just like to welcome into probationary territory. And I just saw her on screen, Alex Franco at Flower Hill. I've actually had the privilege of observing her at least once, and it could be more than that. Forgive me, Alex, if it has been more than that, but she's doing a terrific job. And the other young lady you met earlier, Ashley Pimentel, she is at Washington, and she has she's taken Washington like Alex has taken Flower Hill by storm. So we're happy to have these folks on board, and we look forward to their long and successful careers in Huntington. So congratulations to Alex and Ashley. And the board has also approved tonight the tenure of Ms. Catherine Kidd in the district health department. Katie has done a really nice job for us over the past couple of years, and I have no doubt that she's going to continue along that same pathway. So I'd like to congratulate her this evening on earning her tenure as a health teacher in Huntington. That's all I have. Thank you.
Noise keeps happening. Okay, then we move on to the business agenda for Dr. Acker.
Okay, it is upon recommendation from the Superintendent of Schools that the Board of Education approve items I through O on this evening's business agenda.
I have a motion, please.
Bill,
Bill,
Kelly.
and a second from Kelly. Any questions on the business agenda? Okay, then all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everyone. Thank you. I don't think we have any announcements.
Now I
Do-
see Alex on screen. Congratulations, Alex.
Ah. Okay, then that brings us to our second public commentary. The same rules apply as the first. And please raise your, except that you can speak on any topic, except personnel or students. Individual students, I mean. Please raise your electronic hand if you have a comment. Okay. Nobody? All right then. Comments from board members? If there are none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Michelle?
Michelle, in a second.
Xavier.
This made me miss Tom.
Same exact thought.
Favorite motion. All in favor?
Aye.
That's everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will see you next time.
All right, bye.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.